Hello, everyone. I'm Khalid, your host for the Lex Walk Talks on Russia Ukraine conflict and its impact on regional geopolitics. This Sunday evening, we have highly esteemed and learned panelists with us from various backgrounds in international relations and pol science, and we'll be discussing in detail about the ongoing Russia Ukraine conflict. But before that, let me introduce my esteemed panelist to the viewers before we open up for the high octane, insightful discussion to shed some light on the ongoing conflict. So we have with us today Dr. Minrul Islam Biswas, who has a doctorate in pol science from Jamia Millia Islamia, and currently, he's working as assistant professor in political science, School of Law at lovely Professional University, Punjab, and he teaches public administration, political theory, and world affairs to the students. Now we have with us Abhishek Kumar. He graduated from Banaras Hindu University and have a master's in national security studies from Haifa University, Israel. He is among few of research scholars who have been invited for the public diplomacy program under Political and Security Division MENA, Middle East North Africa section at NATO headquarters Brussels and European Commission's Luxembourg. At present, he is senior research at fellow at Manohar Parrikar Institute of Defense and Security Analysis Studies under Ministry of Defense, India. So, welcome all the speakers, and thank you for joining us today for this high octane debate. So, before we begin, as we all know, हम सब जानते हैं, this topic will be bilingual. We can talk either of the language because most of the viewers are Indian, and we want to just give a insight into the ongoing conflict. तो हम लोग डिस्कस करेंगे one by one. So now I open this discussion to the panelist. Sir, आप इस अग्रेशन को, रशियन अग्रेशन को आप किस तरह से, हाउ डू यू सी दिस sudden Russian aggression in Ukraine? How do you see that? And can you give a little background of this aggression? Where does it start from? कहाँ से शुरू होता है ये सब? Yeah, anyone? Abhishek, Mr. Abhishek, please.
I would just start with that the Ukrainians got independence in 1991,
Yeah,
the USSR, and then how, the size geopolitically, Ukraine is equivalent to France, and it holds a very strategic point where it connects Europe uh, uh, with the rest of the world. So the aggression which we are looking at now with the Russian forces is not sudden. It's been building up in 2014,
Hello.
where several
yeah. Hello.
ceasefires has been breached.
Just a minute. Yeah,
Uh,
Mr. Mohanty, can you are you audible? I mean, we are audible to you. Can you hear us? Sorry for the interruption. Yeah, still our third panelist, Mr. Mohanty, is unable to join us because of some technical glitch. Meanwhile, we'll be resolving that issue. Now we are to Abhishek Kumar. Yeah, sorry for the interruption, sir. Please carry on.
so the whole process started in 2013 when the present president of the Ukrainian part is Viktor Yanukovych, who actually was a pro-Russian supporter who supported the regions which are connected to the Ukrainian border, Donbass and Donbass region. And the thing started escalating when there was a treaty between uh, the, the rebels and the Ukrainian government about the ceasefire. And then over the 2020, there are several ceasefire violations, and which resulted in this kind of violations. But most of the sources explains that why actually Putin has been able to dominate that particular region, because it's not about that now Russia is moving forward towards the the capital region of Kiev. But if you look at the whole, the tools which are being used by Vladimir Putin to to be there where the Russians are, is very wholesome. He is using a similar kind of a playbook which he has used before in Georgian invasion in 2008 and then 2014 when they annexed the Crimea and most of the regions. I mean, if you look at the Russian intervention in Syria, in recently in Mali, in Western Africa, in Sahel region, so most of the cases they use a secret, the private military contractor PMCs, which are like Wagner, which has been come to a light for a most of the time now. So the main reason why if you have looked at the Putin's address to the nation while allowing its battalion target groups BTGs to the main land of Ukraine, he actually he just said that there are people who are drug lords and alcoholics and all who are just operating in independent Ukraine and they want to change the regime basically. And this fight is actually unequal, say, because Russia has a very unformidable army. So they have built it ever since the fall of the USSR. They have created a nearly impossible army. They have very much tactical advanced weaponaries and cyber attack capabilities. So the great thing about this particular uh, step is not new. I mean, I would say that this kind of approach and tactical approach has been adopted by Russia, and one of the reason why Russia is more successful in annexing those regions is they don't have to, the Russian army do not have to be there on the ground. They actually have rebels groups which are activated in Donbass region, Luhansk or Donbass regions. And if you follow a few of the historical aspects that why since 2014 Russia is more aggressive in Ukrainian eastern borders is because the ethnicity actually Eastern Europe, Eastern Ukraine, and the Western Ukraine is completely having a different kind of setup. The Western Ukrainians want to get into the NATO side or the European side, but Eastern Europe is completely different because they have like 1 out of 5 uh, the individuals are Russian origin in the Eastern uh, uh, Ukraine. But and the similar tactic was used in Georgia also when they attacked in 2008. They actually said that it was an independent state, and they annexed it. Like and the most of the part is this part of
Okay, right.
Donbass region and Luhansk and the region has been
Yeah.
under a very much turbulences since 2014.
Great, great. So, Mr. Abhishek, you just shed on the light on the current, conflict. Coming to the Dr. Aminul, what's your take on the recent, conflict, and how do you, how where do you see coming, this conflict from? I mean, what is the, what do you call, ideological background or political background you see in this whole game?
Thank you, Khalid, for inviting me. So, as you have mentioned
Yeah,
that
you're
it's
welcome.
sudden issue. So that is not exactly sudden, as the speaker has also mentioned. That to understand this Ukraine-Russia crisis, you need to go back to that cold era, Cold War period, pre-1991 period. And as also the previous panelist has mentioned that in 1991, before 1991, Ukraine was very much part with Russia under USSR. And after independence in 1991, in Ukrainian society, the problem is, there has been pro-Russians and, in some parts, and there are people, just, there are a large section among the in Ukrainian society that they tried to forget the legacy that once they were part of Russia. But
Okay.
that there was as there are many people pro-Russians, so they did not like that thing. But the problem is, just the main point one should understand that Ukraine has become independent. Then why Russia is so much concerned about it? Why Russia is concerned how Ukraine will go, in which direction Ukraine will go, whether Ukraine will have good
Right.
relation with Russia or not. Why this is a cause of concern to Russia, and exactly in that context comes the question of NATO, because
Right. Right.
very very
So,
frankly, anyone
sorry to interrupt.
they,
Sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Minarul. I would like to, mention something which while I was doing some research on the same issue. I came up with a writing. I mean, just last summer, Putin penned a whopping 5,000 word essay, and that was written on 12th of July 2021, entitled "On the Historical Unit of Russian and Ukrainian," all about how they are one people, one single whole. He goes to question the legitimacy of Ukraine's border, saying that the country was formed on the lands of historical Russia and can only achieve true sovereignty in partnership with Kremlin. So these theories were echoed in aggressive speech on Monday before he just attacked Ukraine. So and declared two breakaway eastern regions of Ukraine to be independent. So is what do you think? Is Putin trying to rewrite history of Ukraine? Because the whole scenario, when you look back and post Cold War era, 1991, somehow see the war of ideology has been over, right? After the disintegration of Soviet Union, so there is no war or no war of ideology of communism, between communism and liberal democracy. So what Russia is trying to achieve through this rivalry, because this rivalry is no more a war of ideologies. So what he wants to, trying to achieve, he wants a greater Russia or something else? What is the Putin's concern in the entire scenario? Because becoming an external aggression, because it was not 2014 where he annexed Crimea. We are in 2022, and annexation in everywhere, because there is a China looking at Taiwan. There are several regions, and these are big UNSC members as well. So when a UNSC member become an aggressor, so what will be that what do you call ramifications around the globe? So the main question is, what Putin exactly want to trying to achieve? He wants a greater Russia or something like that, or he's saying just Ukraine don't go to the West allies or US and European Union, be with us, and it's all about that. Yeah, to Abhishek. Yeah, one by one you
see
can
Khalid,
address this.
I have
Yeah.
in my view I have a one line answer. That the concern of
Okay.
Putin is the expansion of NATO. Okay.
Okay.
See, no country will accept or admit, any kind of threat to its regional security and regional peace. So, my answer to your question is very simple: that expansion of NATO is the only concern of Putin, because if NATO is like expanded, if Ukraine is become a part of Ukraine becomes part of NATO, so that can pose a great threat to Russian security in the region. So that is the only concern which Putin is concerned. That is why, as you have mentioned, that he became very aggressive. He wrote a essay. So his main concern is that anyway he had to ensure that the expansion of NATO must be checked. That is the main concern of
Okay.
Putin. As far as
Sure. Sure.
the large
Yeah.
consequences, vis-a-vis India, as you have talked about that in this Ukraine-Russia crisis, what is waiting for India? So again, I am very much concerned about India, because it is very complicated scenario as far as India is concerned. As you have already seen that uh, China has uh, given its support to Russia. China has openly, directly told Putin that China is with Russia. So, my analysis here is that in case there is, larger escalation of the crisis, and China supports Russia, and if India follows the established, principle of non-alignment, So, and if India does not support Russia, so my concern is that in future, if there is, as you know, that the hostility between China and India is always there. So in future, is there any hostility between India and China? So in that case, Russia might support China. As China is today obliging Russia, tomorrow Russia will oblige China. So that can be a greater problem for India. But at the same time, as I am saying, that it is very complicated scenario. India cannot support cannot go against Russia. Neither it cannot go against USA also, because both way a problematic thing.
Okay, okay. Yeah, good point, डॉक्टर मिनरुल. अभिषेक से थोड़ा सा मैं जानना चाहूंगा इस टॉपिक पे, टू ऑल अदर व्यूअर्स, बाइलिंगुअल
No,
व्यूअर्स.
I mean before you coin a question on this, I would like to.
No, I'm not coining the question. मैं वही सेम जो मैंने अभी पूछा था कि पुतिन
हाँ, मैं
क्या
उस पे
अचीव
आ
करना
रहा
चाह
हूँ.
रहे हैं इस टॉपिक पे, और कि
Actually,
वो जो
the most important thing.
यूक्रेन को सेम पार्ट ऑफ सेम कल्चरल एथनिक पार्ट से देखते हैं, एंड दे और उसको मिलाना चाहते हैं, या फिर किस एंगल से आप इस पे कुछ
मैं इसको 2014 से फिर से लेना चाहूंगा, क्योंकि 2014 में जब क्रीमिया को रशिया ने अनेक्स किया, तो एक गेटवे मिला. किसी भी कंट्री के लिए सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट एक गेटवे होता है, वो उसका ओपन टू द सी होता है, कि समंदर की तरफ उसका रास्ता कहाँ खुलता है. जब क्राइमिया को 2014 में अनेक्स किया रशियन फोर्सेस, तो उन्होंने एक रूट दिया जो कि टर्की होकर जाता है, जो कि ओडिसी और मोल्दोवा के पास से जाता है, जो एक नेवल फ्लीट है रशिया का, जो कि एक्सेस देता है सीरिया के लिए, जहां पर 2016 में और 15 में आईसिस के खिलाफ ऑपरेशन हुए, जहां पर रशियन नेवी ने बेसिकली C2 लैंड टारगेट किए, जो कि आईसिस के थे सीरिया में. So that is one of the biggest points that Russia is looking for. I think the Russians are looking for a greater accessibility to the sea, because when you have an access to the sea, and comparatively, if you look at the structure of the Russian military, which has been remodified since 2008 till 2020, Russian military has been advancing their capabilities in Syria, not in terms of equipment, armories, weapons, radar systems, but also in terms of organizational structures. So when they are looking for Crimea, they will get a full access to the sea through Black Sea, and which passes through Turkey. So if you look at the recent escalation, Turkey was not able to block the Russian naval aircraft to block the Black Sea. So I mean, of course I agree with the former speaker that yes, no country will allow, since if the Ukrainians join the NATO forces, and the NATO forces will patrol the area which they have according to the article, 5.
Yeah, Abhishek, आपने आई वुड लाइक टू इंटरवीन हियर, जस्ट व्यूअर्स को ही ये मैं बताना चाहेंगे हम लोग, कि आपने जैसे बार बार आप दोनों स्पीकर्स ने नाटो का नाम लिया. नाटो को हम बार बार इन्वोक कर रहे हैं यहाँ पे नाटो. तो क्या हम नाटो के बारे में थोड़ा सा व्यूअर्स को आप बताएंगे? और नाटो वाज बिफोर, आई मीन पोस्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर सेकेंड एरा का एक मिलिट्री अलायंस था ड्यूरिंग द टाइम ऑफ कोल्ड वॉर एरा. सो कोल्ड वॉर खत्म होने के बाद भी उसका एग्जिस्टेंस कितना ज्यादा क्या कहते हैं उसको कंसर्न है रशिया के लिए, उसका एग्जिस्टेंस कितना इंपॉर्टेंट है, होना चाहिए नहीं होना चाहिए. सो आप एक बार नाटो के बारे में, और आज भी इसका एग्जिस्टेंस, मतलब इट शुड हैव बीन डिसबैंडेड बिकॉज कोल्ड वॉर खत्म हो चुका था 1991 आफ्टर द डिसइंटीग्रेशन. तो उसका कंटिन्यूटी बना रहना कितना बड़ा थ्रेट है रशिया के लिए, बिकॉज इन द एंड सब कुछ वहीं आके होता है कि यू बिकम, अगर यूक्रेन मेंबर बनता है तो नाटो जो है रशिया के ईस्टर्न बॉर्डर तक आ सकता है, दे कैन डिप्लॉय देयर मिसाइल्स एवरीथिंग. सो दैट वाज अ थ्रेट. सो नाटो का होना इतना क्यों जरूरी है, जो बार बार पुतिन ने इस बात को उठाया अलग अलग मंच पे यूरोपियन यूनियन के साथ. सो थोड़ा सा ब्रीफ इंट्रोडक्शन एंड अबाउट नाटो, और नाटो का एग्जिस्टेंस क्यों जरूरी है, और क्यों होना चाहिए या नहीं होना चाहिए मेरे व्यूअर्स को.
NATO is one of the your biggest military alliances, because बहुत सारे यूरोपियन कंट्रीज के पास वो कैपेबिलिटी नहीं है, and they do not think that they should have those military capabilities. Take example of स्विट्जरलैंड और बहुत सारी कंट्रीज है जिनके पास उतने मैन पावर नहीं है. So they want to become into a union where every alliance, it comes to NATO, उनका कहना है कि सेक्शन 5 के तहत जो भी कंट्री थ्रेट फील होगा, उनको अटैक फील होगा, फॉरेन इन्वेजन का फील होगा आफ्टर द वर्ल्ड वॉर व्हेन एवरीथिंग स्टार्टेड। और ये कंडीशन भी था कि जब नेटो बन रहा था तो रशियन लीडर्स gorbachev और येल्सिन के टाइम में भी ये भी कहा गया कि आप एक्सपेंड नहीं करेंगे, आप ईस्ट से वेस्ट की तरफ नहीं आएंगे। लेकिन ऐसा हुआ, एंड देन पोलैंड which is quite near to the Ukraine, or Romania, Hungary, these all are NATO alliances, and which actually connect. And Belarus, और बेलारूस के साथ जो एक संबंध है जो कि बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है रशिया के साथ, बेलारूसियन, बिकॉज there's a treaty called Lisbon Treaty, if I'm not wrong. वहां पर जब यूएसएसआर था तो सबसे ज्यादा न्यूक्लियर फैसिलिटीज थी रशिया की, जहां पर से रशियन के साथ एक समझौता हुआ बेलारूस के साथ, जिसमें सारे न्यूक्लियर फैसिलिटीज को वहां से हटाया गया और शिफ्ट किया गया रशिया में। तब वहां एक ट्रीटी हुई थी जहां पर बेलारूस ने कहा कि हम चाहते हैं कि हम फ्यूचर एश्योरेंस चाहते हैं आपसे कि जो भी जितने भी न्यूक्लियर वेपन, प्लूटोनियम ग्रेडेड और जो भी हैं, वो हम आपकी गारंटी में देते हैं और हम आपको सुरक्षा देंगे, ऐसा रशियन लीडर्स ने कहा। तो मिला जुला कर ये है कि नेटो का होना एक रशियन एग्रेशन को देखना है, क्योंकि मुझे लगता है कि ऑल ऑफ द स्टोरी इज लाइक नेटो इज अगेंस्ट रशिया, और उसके अलावा मुझे लगता नहीं कि ज्योग्राफिकली वो ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है। और खास करके अब जब यूरोप का बहुत सारा कंट्री जो है वो गैस एनर्जी पे निर्भर करता है, they have a gas pipeline deal which is called Nord 2, which passes through Poland और ग्रीनफील्ड जर्मनी तक जाता है, जो कि बहुत एक क्रूशियल गैस पाइपलाइन डील है, जिसमें कम से कम 10 से 20 कंट्रीज जो हैं वो उससे लाभ मिलता है उनको एनर्जी सेक्टर से। आज जब बात सीओपी की हो रही है या क्लाइमेट चेंज की हो रही है, सस्टेनेबल एनर्जी की हो रही है, एट द सेम टाइम रशिया प्लेज अ वेरी ह्यूज रोल इन एनर्जी supportability to the European countries. So things becomes very very complex when it comes to the energy efficiency for the Europeans. और एक तरफ तो जर्मनी कहता है कि भाई हम जो है हम वेपन सप्लाई नहीं कर सकते। कल ही नेदरलैंड्स के प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने जर्मन पार्लियामेंट से परमिशन लिया कि जर्मन ग्रेडेड वेपन्स जो है यूक्रेनियन गवर्नमेंट को सपोर्ट के लिए भेजेंगे। Even Turkey also is supporting the Ukrainians with high graded drones, which can actually hit high precision targets. So चीजें बहुत ज्यादा कॉम्प्लेक्स हैं वहां पर, लेकिन नाटो का होना, एक नाटो अलायंस का होना एक बहुत बड़ा एश्योरिटी देता है यूरोपियन कंट्रीज को बेसिकली रशिया के खिलाफ, नॉट जस्ट इन टर्म्स ऑफ हार्डवेयर मिलिट्री अटैक्स बट also in terms of cyber attacks too. They have specific alliances which actually deals not in terms of Europe but in terms of Middle East also. They are looking for more alliances in Middle East in order to stop the Russian expansion. Unlike the US thing, what US does, they do in a calculated way, but Russia do not play with their own rules. They have their own tactics to conduct operations, and this is what actually it possesses a threat to the European countries. I think that's the thing.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Minrul, आपका कोई points you want to put here?
Yes. No. In
Please.
my view, NATO is more being used by USA.
Right.
And in my view, that NATO will not be disbanded because behind this there is USA. In fact, my understanding is that this current Ukraine crisis, before this, before the invasion, Russian invasion, for a few days, in fact, USA was creating hysteria in the minds of Ukrainian people in the world. Okay, there is now a provoking Ukrainians, and just USA was trying to take the other countries in its side, because though that Cold War period, so-called Cold War period, has been over, but still, in my view, USA considered Russia as one of the countries which can challenge it. So USA always wants USA will always work to counter Russia. That one of the mechanism which is trying to which US is trying to do. So that is for the my view is that for the world peace, for the security of larger larger security of the world, I think this NATO should be disbanded. But at the same time, US will try its best not to disband it. And in fact, NATO US is in fact trying to expand it. Leave
Right.
alone disbanding, US is trying to expand it. And that there comes the
Uh,
questions.
राइट राइट सो मैं अगर यहाँ पे एक दूसरा पर्सपेक्टिव रखूं फ्रॉम द पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू ऑफ द रशिया कि NATO there is a lot of conflict between because of the you know presence of NATO in eastern sectors, I mean close to the Russian boundary. तो आपको esteemed panelist को नहीं लगता है कि वार्सो पैक्ट जो था, वार्सो पैक्ट जो उनके अपने प्रोटेक्शन के लिए उसके जाने के बाद नाटो कहीं ना कहीं बार बार आके आई मीन रशिया को इर्क करता है, इरिटेंट क्रिएट करता है, बिकॉज एक थ्रेट का जो परसेप्शन बना है, बिकॉज इन सारे सिनेरियो से तो हमें ये पता चलता है कि देयर इज अ काइंड ऑफ अ मिसट्रस्ट बिटवीन द वेस्ट एंड द रशिया, राइट. रशिया जो है, अगर मैं हिस्ट्री में जाऊं पोस्ट कोल्ड वार एरा, तो रशिया ट्राइड टू मेक अ गुड रैपो, गुड रिलेशन विथ EU, यूरोपियन यूनियन and US as well, but वो उसमें इतना succeed नहीं हो पाया. For example, if I go and cite something when Putin came into power, like for example यूरेशियन इकोनॉमिक यूनियन की बात पुतिन करते हैं, यूरेशियन आफ्टर लाइक ये सब कोल्ड पोस्ट कोल्ड वॉर की बात बता रहा हूँ. देन उनका एक मेजर कंसेप्ट है टू ऑफ अ ग्रेटर यूरोप फ्रॉम लिस्बन टू व्लादिवोस्टॉक. ही फर्स्ट आउटलाइंड इन 2010, 2010 में उन्होंने आउटलाइन किया था कि ही वांट अ ग्रेटर यूरोप. इट वाज हिज आइडिया, हिज माइंड. आई मीन रशिया हैज इट्स ओन इंडिपेंडेंट थॉट, जो कि हो सकता है यूरोपियन यूनियन का अलग हो. यूरोपियन यूनियन या यूरोप, वेस्ट अभी आज भी रशिया को सोवियत यूनियन के कोलैप्स होने के बाद भी ट्रस्ट नहीं कर पाता है. ठीक है, इसके बीच में मेजर इरिटेंट क्या है? व्हाट आर दोज मेजर इरिटेंट्स? कि दीज आर द रीजंस, दीज आर द फैक्टर्स व्हाट रशिया ट्राइड टू अचीव आफ्टर 1991, एंड किस तरह से समटाइम्स रशिया, आई मीन यूरोपियन यूनियन जो है, कभी बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग रिस्पॉन्स दिखाता है, समटाइम्स ल्यूकवार्म रिस्पॉन्स. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, जैसे कि यूक्रेन और सारे फॉर्मर सोवियत यूनियन के जो मेंबर्स को उन्होंने नाटो मेंबरशिप दिया, सारे बाल्टिक कंट्रीज को और इन सब को, लेकिन उसके बाद अब नाउ यूक्रेन की तरफ जा रहे हैं. फिर यूक्रेन से उन्होंने, अब रशिया ने अपना क्या कहते हैं अपोजिशन दिखाना शुरू किया है, बहुत ही स्ट्रांगली ऑब्जेक्ट किया है इन चीज़ों पे. तो रशिया क्या अचीव करना चाहता था पूरे यूरोपियन यूनियन के साथ, और कहाँ वो अचीव नहीं कर सका, इस पे आप थोड़ा सा कुछ बताएं. और जो कि अब एक मेजर इशू में बॉइल हो रहा है कि अब नाउ, बिकॉज अग्रेशन, व्हाट वी सी as an external aggression now in Ukraine is a culmination of many factors, right? आप ये सब समझते हैं, कोई एक फैक्टर नहीं है. इसका इमीडिएट कॉज एक नाटो का विस्तार हो सकता है, बट व्हाट आर द अदर फैक्टर्स जो कल्मिनेट होके यहाँ तक इस पोजीशन पे जहां हम खड़े वहां तक आया है? प्लीज आप एड्रेस करें अभिषेक.
I think the most important thing here we cannot skip here is the internal problem between the Ukrainians. आप अगर 1917 की ओर जाए, मैं कुछ पोस्ट वर्ल्ड वार की तरफ नहीं जाऊंगा, मैं 1917 में जाऊंगा, जब 1917 में यूक्रेन ने खुद को अपना
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, या
1922 में फिर उनको फिर से स्टालिन के द्वारा जब जोड़ दिया गया यूएसएसआर में, उसके बाद से पूरी तरह से रशिया के अंदर में रहा यूक्रेन. लेकिन जब आप देखेंगे कि यूक्रेन का अंदर का जो पूरा डेमोग्राफी है, जिसमें कि जो ईस्टर्न पार्ट ऑफ जो भी सबसे पहला पॉइंट ऑफ ये बना, डिसएग्रीमेंट बना कि भाई हम इंडिपेंडेंट घोषित करते हैं या ये करते हैं. तो आई थिंक अंदर जो दोनों ही अल्ट्रा ऑर्थोडॉक्स, मुझे लगता है कि ऑर्थोडॉक्स ज्यूइश, ऑर्थोडॉक्स क्रिश्चियन इसको मानते हैं. और मुझे लगता है कि यूक्रेनियंस ने हमेशा से अपने आप को इंडिपेंडेंट करने की बात की, और 2014 के क्राइसिस से पहले भी बहुत सारे इनकाउंटर्स हुए जिसमें वेस्टर्न यूक्रेन और ईस्टर्न यूक्रेन के अंदर बहुत ये हुआ. इससे पहले 2013 में जब मैं बात कर रहा था, विक्टर इनके प्रेसिडेंट जो कि थे जो कि was a big supporter of Putin. Same
Putin, yeah.
same as like Chechenian rebel who annexed like who threatened the Russian sovereignty, and they were like puppet बैठा दिया गया वहां पर, जो कि कादिरोव रहे. उसके बाद अब बेलारूसियन जो जो बेलारूसियन प्राइम मिनिस्टर हैं वो भी रशियन पपेट ही हैं. So I would see that there are few things, but why the question is why the Ukrainians are protesting against the Russian invasion, and that should be addressed very
बिल्कुल
clearly that
बिल्कुल. बिकॉज
why
आई वुड लाइक टू जस्ट इंटरव्यू कि हम इस बात से भी देख रहे हैं कि जिस तरह से रेजिस्टेंस यूक्रेन के लोगों ने दिया है, उसकी आर्मी ने जो रेजिस्टेंस दिया है, ये बात साफ दिखाता है कि वो जो रशिया अचीव करना चाहता था इंटीग्रेट करके यूक्रेन को, यूक्रेन मतलब बिगर पॉपुलेशन, ह्यूज पॉपुलेशन जो है उसके फेवर में नहीं है. एंड
6.4
दैट शोज द रेजिस्टेंस. वो
6.2
रेजिस्टेंस से
crore
बिल्कुल साफ
of
पता चल रहा
people.
है. It is
Yes.
fourth day of the aggression of war, and still they are, I mean, each and every one, including the president,
और
has
खालिद, अब अगर
taken
आप
up
याद
arms.
करें क्राइमिया के दौरान जब हुआ था, तो एक the single bullet was not fired when it was being annexed. It was
Right,
where
right, right.
already the
बिल्कुल सही
ethnic
कहा
groups
आपने
of the
यार.
Russians who were there, who accepted that okay, we want to be the part of the Russians because we think that there are ethnicities. So actually सिर्फ चीजें नाटो की तरफ से नहीं है. People in 2013 जब विक्टर यातोनिकोव को लोगों ने उठाकर वहां की गद्दी से फेंक दिया, तो वहां पर एक प्रोटेस्ट हुआ. मैदान something which
मैदान
is
मैदान
the
जी.
center of the Ukrainian parliament
या
city, Kyiv. तो वहां पर ये बात हुई कि वेस्टर्न यूक्रेन के जो लोग थे वो नाटो और यूरोपियन यूरोपियन यूनियन से मिलना चाहते थे, और ईस्टर्न जो कि मोस्ट ऑफ द ओरिजिन जो है उनका वो रशियन ओरिजिन है, so they wanted to be a part of that. In that particular perspective, there is a person called Igor Gurkin. If you look at the name of this particular person, who has been involved in Chechnya, who has been involved in mostly in Georgian conflict, in different kind of conflicts, who was a former military veteran of the Russian army, and then he joined the FSB, Federal Services of the Russian. So these are the puppets which Putin uses to actually, these are trump cards that Putin plays in terms of annexing Russia. And of course, he feels that it will be a political benefit for Putin to annex Ukraine. And I don't think so, because I think that this time Putin's intention is more emotional. It's not more tactical, because Putin is a very calculated person. He's a very smart person. He's one of the military geniuses. Not in terms of military genius, but he's a former head of the KGB. तो मुझे लगता है कि हाँ, हम कह सकते हैं एक तरफ से कि हाँ, नेटो को डिसबैंड कर देना चाहिए या ये करना चाहिए. But if you look at the larger perspective, there is no Russia. There is only Putin. So when we talk about a person who represents a country, it cannot be a one person who is representing the whole country. So in that perspective, I think that yes, uh, the large scale. I mean, who orders a full scale invasion from all the directions to conquer and kill? I don't think so. Like a czarist mindset of like would order someone who can actually kill innocent
So
civilians. And
ऑफ लेट हम लोग ये देख रहे हैं ना बार बार बहुत सारे अलग अलग रीजन्स में दैट
और
पीपल
सिर्फ
वांट टू
रशिया
गो बैक टू
रशिया
द
सिर्फ ऐसा नहीं है.
आई मीन
Yes, yes.
in theories हम देख रहे हैं ना कि people want to go back to their glorify their past. For example, Russia want that great Russia
Yes.
before the
Similar.
Cold War
Trump ने
era.
भी ऐसा किया. He said that make
Yeah,
America
the
great
great
again.
America, let the America, yeah,
Yes, of course.
great again.
वहां पर
तो
हाँ,
पास्ट में ये जाने का, because nowadays we don't I mean the countries don't have an issue. I mean they are more playing on the emotional part, because like we want to be the
yes,
a country of that past, of that glory. ये
absolutely.
ज्यादा है because. और एक और चीज इसमें मैं जोड़ना चाहूंगा कि कहीं ना कहीं से रशिया जो है बार बार पुतिन इस इशू में जो एथनिसिटी का भी मैटर ये कर रहे हैं, वो बार बार यूक्रेन को कह रहे हैं कि आप सब रशियंस हैं, और ये एक एक एथनिसिटी को लाकर देख रहे हैं कि यूक्रेन जो है एक एक्चुअली रशिया है, जो कि वेस्टर्न पार्ट ऑफ द रशियंस जो है इस बात को नहीं बिलीव करते, नहीं मानते और रेजिस्टेंस दे रहे हैं. तो क्या हम ये माने कि जैसे कि नाउ विद दिस अग्रेशन अब क्या होगा कि पॉलिटिकली अब हम देखें या इकोनॉमिकली देखें या मिलिट्री वाइज देखें, तो ये जो पूरा यूरोपियन कॉन्टिनेंट है, क्या ये फिर से डिवाइड नहीं हो जा रहा है कि एक तरफ रशिया इन द ईस्ट है, एक तरफ नाटो एंड ईयू एंड द वेस्ट है, और पूरा का पूरा ये जो यूक्रेन का जो फील्ड है, यूक्रेन, मोल्डोवा एंड साउथ कॉकेशस जो है, ये पूरा अब नहीं लग रहा कि आने वाले दिनों में ये पूरा बैटल ग्राउंड बन के तैयार होने वाला है बिटवीन द
I
ईयू
would,
एंड
I would, I,
रशिया?
I would not say it's a battleground, but it will be a long-term contestation ground. I mean, there will be a huge military deployment, और वो एक बहुत लंबे समय तक चलेगा. I mean, that will be a standoff because NATO is not ready to believe कि यूक्रेन को कवर अप करने के बाद वो पोलैंड या रोमानिया या किसी भी नेटो कंट्रीज के अंदर इन्वेस्ट नहीं कर सकता. आई मीन, इसके अटैक करने से पहले भी बेलारूस के साथ रशिया ने मिलिट्री ड्रिल्स किए, एंड नोबडी न्यू कि वो एक्चुअल में वो they were trying to, they were practicing for a real battle, and this is actually has happened. And most of the analysts and security experts have already said that, uh, the worst thing about the war is when to start, but you don't know who will end it. So this is what
या
what
राइट,
what
बिल्कुल
was
सही कहा आपने.
happening. तो
या
मुझे लगता है कि एक परमानेंट कंटेस्टेशन का ग्राउंड रहेगा, वहां पर और मिलिट्री डेवलपमेंट होंगे, द टेंशन विल बी मोर हायर in the region, especially अब ये देखना होगा कि टर्की का क्या रोल रहता है, because टर्की is a part of NATO alliance, and all the NATO alliances who are regionally affected by this move of Russia. So
या
there will be, I mean,
तो
for me, like what I see that after this particular thing, the things will come is like more, the Russia will demilitarize this area after invading, getting over this particular invasion. They will put their own regime. The basic thing about the Russians are looking is a regime change in Ukraine. I don't think so that Russian military is going to stay there for long. If they stay there for long, there will be more, conflict between NATO and the Russian. Because in the past also, they had, several airspace breached by the NATO sometimes, by the Russians sometimes. So in the region of Azov, which is a naval fleet, installment for the Russians nearby at the eastern borders of Ukraine.
या सो
So the Europeans,
डॉक्टर
of
मिनरुल से
course, the
मैं
Europeans will try to stop more insurgencies because
Yes,
pro-Russian rebels are already there in the Donbass and in the region. So they will try to cover up
या
more parts of the
डोंस्टेक एंड लुशांक, या these regions.
yeah.
डॉक्टर मिनरुल से मैं यही कहना चाहूंगा. मिनरुल, डॉक्टर मिनारुल, आप इस पॉइंट को कैसे देखते हैं कि क्या फ्यूचर में यूक्रेन is going to become the battleground of the EU, the West and the Russia for a long time? आपको क्या लग रहा है? और इसको आप स्टेबिलिटी के हिसाब, इकोनॉमिक स्टेबिलिटी के हिसाब से, या एक्सपेंशन ऑफ द रशियन इकोनॉमिक, रशिया का जो इकोनॉमिक यूनियन है, जिसको बार बार पुतिन कहते हैं कि एक ह्यूज, एक लॉन्ग यूरेशियन इकोनॉमिक यूनियन के एंगल से कैसे देखते हैं? या डॉक्टर मिनरुल.
See, if this, tension, yeah. So if this tension is de-escalated very soon, so obviously it is going to have larger repercussions. That is what I think. And in that case, as you have mentioned, that in fact, the analysts are saying that already, that as Russia is great source of power, and if there is sanction and that international trade is affected, obviously there will be larger economic consequences. And if it continuously, definitely that will going to have larger repercussions. And here I want to make one thing very clear, as Khalid, you have said that the people of Ukraine are very much united,
Right.
very much united. They are very much ready to go. Every civilians are even ready to go to the war, because this is a very emotional. There is one emotional aspect I mentioned to it. See, when I am saying that Russia is very much concerned with the expansion of NATO, so but at the same time, no country will accept, or no people, the citizens of no country will accept that some other country will attack their, or question their sovereignty, or attack, invade them. Okay. So while Russia is concerned, Russia will try to demilitarize the area, but at the same time, that with the pretext of that expansion of NATO, that if Ukraine is included in NATO, or if USA wants to provoke in including it, if Russia wants to attack or invade a country, and as in fact invaded, so no the citizens of the country cannot accept this thing. This is very emotional. I have a threat, I have an enmity with you. It does not mean just I can control your life. So I always say, the international relation, the country relationship between two countries is like, relationship is like two individuals. So that is, the Russia must, keep in mind. So I think this, aggression at the same time, that cannot be justified. And particularly from humanitarian point of view, I feel, I think that, as soon as possible, there has to be, that ceasefire, there has to be a stop, through diplomacy. Russia can try, but again, Russia has always time and again, US before this invasion, Russia has time and again, asked USA not to include it. But finally, it has invaded. But I think, the it is very important that global civil society, opinion of the global civil society, must go against the invasion. Because as you know that if this continues, so if the world is again, that if two, there is again two, groups, then Russia supported by China and some other countries, and USA, supported by some European countries. And if there is large scale war, so the consequences will be have.
Right. सो बहुत सही पॉइंट आपने डॉक्टर मिनरुल आपने रखा। तो हम जो अगर देख रहे हैं, ये आपने जैसे कहा कि वी सी यू नो in coming years or in coming months, we see, I mean, we have been we have been witnessed this long term rivalry between the two powers. One is former superpowers. तो हम इस बात को अब यहाँ पे नहीं देख सकते हैं कि लाइक 19th सेंचुरी में when there was a power tussle which is called the great game between the British and the Russia. So अब जो मैंने वही बात पीछे कहा था कि now there is no rivalry of ideology of communism and liberal democracy. तो क्या ये it is not like we are going back to that great game power tussle between the US led forces and the Russia. मतलब अगेन ये फिर से एंड अगेन द वही यूक्रेन को हम बैटल ग्राउंड बनाएंगे जैसे पहले 19 गेम हुआ करता था। तो क्या ग्रेट गेम किसी नहीं देख रहा कि एक अलग तरीके का एक पावर स्ट्रगल, बट पावर एक्यूमुलेशन और अपने आप को ज्यादा इकोनॉमिकली और पावरफुल बनाने के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से है।
So, I think, as far as this present 21st century scenario is concerned, I don't look at, this is a war of ideology. It is more about, securing its, own national security. It is ensuring its own national interest. So more than the, ideological, which you have mentioned, it was earlier, the like clashes of ideology. But I think it is like more from economic point of view, more of ensuring its own national security and national interest, and security and stability in the region, more than ideology. That is my view. I guess some network problem with Khalid.
Probably. Yes, I mean, we should. I think we should continue this. I think yes, you were like somehow like you're correct in many terms because I was actually putting some emphasis on because I wrote a paper on the Russian security policy in the Middle East, that how the Russians actually intervened in war with the terror in ISIS in 2015. The interesting fact that I found out that why Russia is present in a huge number in Syria is because of the reserve, the gas and hydrocarbons present in the Syrian territory. And of course, the Russians have got more reservoir of gas and shale gas in Atlantic region. So what is happening now is like they must have thought about, I mean, if I'm not wrong, that Russia has the capability to sustain themselves in terms of natural resources and gas uh, from the Arctic, because since the climate is changing, the only country who is going to get benefit is Russia. And if this happens, then of course, the Russians will be able to answer the energy crisis, which which people say that कि सस्टेन नहीं कर पाएगा रशिया बैंकिंग सेक्टर में और सेक्टर्स में. But I mean that's the point. I mean that's the point which actually forced me to go more into deeper. And I thought that okay, so the concept of Ringland and Heartland, which again comes from the World War era, that why Russia is not allowing foreign forces to be there in the in that rim area. So again, I mean, all things goes around with the geography now. Ideological differences has been, I think, most of the people know that there is no ideology anymore in this world order now. It's all about economics and fulfilling their own electoral agenda. Putin has to you know to set a goal like and for the people who are actually old communist thoughts and Bolivia actually had supported the Putin's stand on invading Ukraine. So yes, of course, it's not all about ideology, and it has it has turned into a different game now.
Yes, and Abhishek, you are very much right that Russia might be able to sustain itself. But
Yeah.
as far as energy security is concerned, but what about other countries which are mostly dependent on Russia, for its energy issues? So the countries which are dependent on Russia, for the energy, energy sources. So there might be a problem, if this crisis continues.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah.
And then coming to yes, Khalid is back.
Yeah. 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 Please, guy. Please, speakers. Please continue. Actually, there was some kind of technical glitch. Please
Hmm.
continue. Yeah, I was listening to
So
you
now
off the
just
camera.
yeah. So now actually just I am more concerned about this power equation. This present just like the equation between China, Russia, and India. So
Mhm.
after this conflict, if it escalates or after the end of this conflict, so as I have earlier mentioned, that whether this equation is going to change, I think this equation China-India equation, which has already existed so far, so that is going to change. So what do you think, Abhishek?
Most of the time, like when Russia annexed Crimea, India did not have like abstained itself from voting for the Ukrainians. And still, India has taken a very neutral position. India's foreign policy has always been neutral in terms of taking part because Russia is a defense partner of India over the decades now, and the relation between U.S. is has become changing since uh, Congress. I think the also like as we all know that Russia is a defense partner of India and the U.S. is an intelligence and strategic partner. And as the Indians have ordered more parts of the S-400 anti-missile system, it will create a lot of power balance in Central Asia with the Central Asian countries already. Uh, uh, I feel like that because the Prime Minister of Pakistan also visited Moscow few days ago. In this time when the whole world is watching when Russia is invading Ukraine, and Ukraine is the only country who actually uh, voted against India in UNSC, and also did not support it during 1998 nuclear test
Test.
and also it also do not stand in favor of India in Kashmir issue, uh, which Russia is actually aware of, and China's point is very much clear. I think China is not going to intervene because Russia has a very much influence in Central Asia. They will not Russia will not allow Chinese to take over in the Central Asian region. So this is not going to change anything for anyone. I think the problem here is for the Western side, I guess, for the NATO, and since the Ukrainian counterpart has requested the Indians to meddle in this war. But again, India has shown its neutrality in UNSC yesterday. Only they abstained. So I'm for me it doesn't change anything for this kind of war.
But you know,
So Abhishek,
right, Russia might be unhappy. Russia has stood by its, India's side. Earlier also, as you have seen, that in 1971, Indo-Bangladesh war also, sorry, that Bangladesh liberation war. So Russia has been almost, you can say, a good partner of India, and Russia, in
Yes,
fact, has stood by, stood
even
by the side of India.
in the time of the
Okay,
Doklam
but
escalation
the
also.
yes.
Doklam escalation also, I think both the counterparts, like the Chinese foreign minister was called upon by the Russian counterpart by Lavrov, and CAM Jaishankar Subramanian also went for a Moscow summit in order to to solve the issue of the escalation, military de-escalation. But even though I think most of the thing which we are looking at is completely unchanged. I think India's relation to Russia is still very strong, and it is not going to bring more changes in the international.
अभिषेक एंड डॉक्टर मीनारुल, इकोनॉमिक पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से मैं हम इस अग्रेशन को कैसे देखेंगे? आई मीन इसके इम्पैक्ट तो ग्लोबली बहुत ज्यादा ह्यूमंगस हो सकता है. आई मीन रशिया जो है वन ऑफ द मेजर व्हाट यू कॉल्ड, वहाँ पे पेट्रोल एंड डीजल, पेट्रोल बहुत ज्यादा है, नेचुरल गैस एंड नेचुरल फॉसिल फ्यूल्स, and is one of the largest producers of the natural gas and fossil fuel. तो इसका impact, because अभी inflation, I mean, is a issue, big issue in India and other third world economies or emerging economies. तो हम inflation point of view से और economic point of view से, जैसे कि stock market का भी हमने हाल देखा just at the the first day of aggression. तो हम लॉन्ग टर्म में इसका इम्पैक्ट कैसे देखते हैं? अगर ये डिस्केलेट होता है या स्टेटस को मेंटेन होता है, और स्टेटस को से हम इसको कहाँ पे देखेंगे कि इसका इकोनॉमिक इम्पैक्ट इंडिया पे क्या क्या पड़ता है एंड अदर इमर्जिंग इकोनॉमीज में, डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज स्पेशली?
आई थिंक प्रेशर जो है वो एनर्जी वाइज वो अफ्रीका पे ज्यादा पड़ेगा, बिकॉज रशिया के पास अभी तक जो है रिजर्वॉयर है वो अंटार्कटिका में ज्यादा है. वी वर जस्ट डिस्कसिंग दिस बिफोर व्हेन यू वेंट ऑफलाइन. So made possible that Russia will able to be sustainable, self-sufficient in terms of energy efficiency. अगर वो यूरोप को एनर्जी सप्लाई कर सकता है तो वो अपने लिए भी सीधा कर सकता है most of the energy efficiency के लिए. और जो भी यूरोपियन कंट्रीज के ऊपर जो स्कार्सिटी होगी एनर्जी एफिशिएंसी की, वो एक्चुअली अफ्रीकन कंट्रीज की तरफ ज्यादा होगा. आई मीन नाइजीरिया एंड लाइक कीनिया और some more African countries who are rich in natural resources. So ये एक कंसर्न है. बाकी फाइनेंशियल और सैंक्शंस और बैंकिंग सेक्टर में जो भी सैंक्शंस होंगे, उससे मुझे नहीं लगता कि अभी तक जो जो भी देखा जा रहा है. ऑफ कोर्स वॉर इज नॉट एन यूजुअल कंडीशन फॉर एनी कंट्री, एनी इकोनॉमी. बेसिकली वो इफेक्ट तो करेगा ही, लेकिन एट द सेम टाइम आल्सो वी नीड टू लुक दैट वेयर whether they are sure about this or not. I mean, if it is not, then Russia has to face a lot of financial issues. It may convert a country into a full war economy. It may actually it may further push it, or it may further bring it down.
जैसे कि हमने देखा फ्रॉम द वेरी ऑन द वेरी फर्स्ट डे, रशिया एंड EU members, they put a lot of sanctions on very strong, in strong words. The president of United States mentioned that we are going to put very heavy sanctions on Russia, and we are going to Russia को क्या कहते हैं उसको, इकोनॉमिकली दे आर गोना डिस्ट एंड फाइट देम. तो इस पूरे पॉइंट से जब इकोनॉमिक सैंक्शंस लगते हैं तो इंडिया इज अ वेरी वेरी लॉन्ग रिलायबल डिफेंस पार्टनर. तो उस सैंक्शंस का इंडिया से किस तरह से इक्वेशन बना रहेगा, या इंडिया पे उसका क्या इम्पैक्ट पड़ेगा? बिकॉज इंडिया हैज गिवन लॉट ऑफ व्हाट यू कॉल डिफेंस डील विद रशिया. लाइक S-40 मिसाइल्स एंड ऑल दैट, तो सैंक्शंस का इम्पैक्ट क्या होगा? बिकॉज देखिए, रशिया भी पार्टनर है एज ए गुड लॉन्ग रिलायबल पार्टनर. इंडिया भी इन लास्ट 1.5 decade में हैज बीन become close to US. So in between, बिल्कुल बीच में इंडिया, I mean, how it gonna impact India? The economic sanctions on Russia, one by one, please.
Professor, would you like to answer this question?
What will be the
See,
middle
actually,
ground
as
for the India?
in
Yeah.
fact, so in the very beginning, I have mentioned it's a very complicated scenario. Like hard option. There is no easy option before India. But when you are talking about inflation, my understanding is that obviously it is going to lead to more inflation. And in fact, I was looking, just going through some data. In fact, the prices of crude oil has already increased. Okay, so obviously that will lead to the inflation, more inflation. And as Abhishek was saying, that there is the equation in the relationship between Russia and China, Russia and India is not going to be that effective. But my understanding is that it is going to be effective if there is larger escalation. And in that case, if the relationship between Russia and India, affects, obviously the sanctions will have direct or indirect, consequences for India. But if anyway India and Russia manages to keep the relationship as it was earlier, so the sanctions, the consequences of the sanctions will be minimum. Minimum.
What I feel, certain, Jimmy, but what I believe that after the delivery of the S-100, the defense anti-missile defense system, the America has repeatedly spoken about CATSA, which they want to apply on the Indian India for for taxations and for tariff systems. So that will be another issue that we need to look after, that what kind of sanctions that America is putting, since Russia is involved in a full-scale war with Ukraine. So probably there will also, consequences in terms of what kind of sanctions that America brings in India in terms of uh, visa processes, or maybe bilateral relations, and that has to be seen still, that what are the consequences that Americans are thinking to imply on the Indian side.
क्या कहते हैं सारे पैनलिस्ट ऑलमोस्ट हमारा वी आर गोइंग टू रीच लाइक इट्स बीन अ सेशन इज रनिंग फॉर लास्ट 1 hour. जाते जाते हम एक क्विक पॉइंट्स इस पे जानना चाहेंगे आप दोनों स्ट्रीम्ड स्पीकर से कि आपकी अंडरस्टैंडिंग के हिसाब से द न्यू इक्वेशन इन द पावर स्ट्रगल बिटवीन द वेस्ट एंड द रशिया, टेकिंग दिस यूक्रेन इन द मिडिल, क्योंकि सारी चीजें यहीं से शुरू होती है, बिकॉज वन यूक्रेन जो है फॉर्मर अलाय रह चुका है, फॉर्मर पार्ट ऑफ सोवियत यूनियन. तो यहाँ से कॉन्फ्लिक्ट शुरू होकर कहाँ तक पहुंचेगा? मतलब क्या ये विल इट बी अ ट्रिगर, जैसा हम कहते हैं, फॉर द थर्ड वर्ल्ड वॉर, और विल द यूनाइटेड नेशन, द रोल ऑफ यूनाइटेड नेशन टू रिस्ट्रेन एवरीवन, कि हम उस लेवल पे अग्रेशन के उस लेवल पे ना पहुंचे जहाँ पे वर्ल्ड वॉर 3 जैसी चीजें का एक थोड़ी सी भी सुगबुगाहट और देयर इज भी लाइक हो सके. तो क्विक पॉइंट्स आप दोनों की तरफ से कि हम यहाँ से अभी कहाँ जाने वाले हैं. स्टेटस को मेंटेन होगा, वर्ल्ड विल कम फॉरवर्ड, आस्क रशिया टू स्टॉप वेयर दे आर और टू गो बैक और पुल बैक द अग्रेशन, और क्या क्या आपके ऑब्जर्वेशन के हिसाब से, अंडरस्टैंडिंग के हिसाब से क्या चांसेस हैं? Quick points.
Yes, Abhishek, you can.
As I mentioned earlier also, that the पहले हमने जब देखा कि जब जॉर्जिया में अटैक किया रशिया ने, तो 2 प्रोविंसेस को उसने इंडिपेंडेंट करके वहां से डिमिलिटराइज कर लिया. इस बार ऐसा कुछ है नहीं. So the things may change into a very uglier side. Possibly the Russian pro-rebels will hold the whole Ukrainian side. There will be a puppet regime, and there will be some more involvement of Belarusian, Belarus and Ukraine, and things may alter in a very uglier way. There might possible that will be a permanent military station, more insurgencies, and that's all. I mean, I think there can be a trigger point where the world is not expecting get into, I think. And we have seen that the international forum has completely failed in order to restrain Russia to attack on innocent civilians and infrastructures, which they say that they haven't ordered still. As I said, that you know that when to start a war, but you don't know who will finish it. So this is my point, and I think
Right.
we need to look into the more consequences that which are are going to unfold.
Yeah. Dr. Mineral, last quick point on the same
See, yes,
conclusion,
yeah.
concluding
So,
remarks.
Khalid,
Your
you know
concluding
that
remarks.
yes, yes. So efficacy of United Nations UN has always been questioned, and in fact, even it is being questioned now also. And I think even United Nations by itself cannot do anything. I think the world leaders must be more responsible. And as few days ago, that Ukrainian ambassador to India was complaining that as Prime Minister Modi has a good relation with Putin, so why can't that good relation can be utilized to convince Russia not to escalate the problem. So I hope the world leaders be more responsible. The global civil society come up with public opinion against such military intervention. And I also hope the good sense prevails in Putin, so that he can consider and come up, because ultimately if there is escalation, it is not that one side will be affected. If there is large scale, so if there is and that is the thing, the more worrisome point is that if there is escalation, and if this is large scale this time, so now we are having many of the countries are now today nuclear power. So the consequences is very immense. So that's why the global civil society, the world leaders, as well as Putin, must think, must introspect, just recall the consequences of the previous two world wars. And accordingly, I think that there is a need to de-escalate the tension.
Yeah, thank you very much, speakers. Uh, before after these concluding remarks, I would like my viewers कि अब हम लोग विदा लेने वाले हैं. And before that, it was indeed a great session of with a panel of extremely enthusiastic speakers. I believe that after this enlightening session, a lot of your doubts about the ongoing conflict and the background about the same must have been cleared. We would be very back soon with our next session on the another hot topic of discussion. So thank you once again, Abhishek and Dr. Minrul, for joining us today with this high octane panel discussion on this Lex Walk talk. We'll invite you in another hot topic, maybe sometime in furtherance of, let's see where this aggression goes, what will be the stand of Russia. Before that, thank you. Thank you for joining
Yes.
us.
Yeah. So before we meet for the
Thank you.
next session, there might be many changes, many events, many consequences, many changes. So thank you, Khalid. Thank you, Abhishek.
Yeah, yeah, you're
It was
welcome.
nice
You're
listening
welcome.
to you.
Yeah, thank you, Abhishek, and thank you, Dr. Minal. Yeah,
Thank you.
goodbye.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you.